I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. The debates are over, the election just days away. Tonight, the latest and why Catholics are key to victory. Remarkable pictures of the explosion that is rocking the Middle East. And the Catholic who would be senator. More of my talk with Wendy Long. Good evening and thank you for joining us. 2 weeks and counting until the nation chooses a president, and Catholic voters may hold the keys to victory. Last night, the candidates met for the final time in debate. Foreign policy was the topic. President Obama criticized Governor Romney's understanding of the challenges facing America.
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because the Cold War's been over for 20 years. I think Governor Romney maybe hasn't spent enough time looking at how our military works. You mentioned the Navy, for example, and that we have fewer ships than we did in 1916. Well, Governor, we also have fewer horses and bayonets because the nature of our military's changed. We have these things called aircraft carriers where planes land on them. We have these ships that go underwater, nuclear submarines.
Governor Romney was critical of the president's trip to the Middle East early in his term when Mr. Obama promised a different America.
The reason I call it an apology tour is because you went to the Middle East and you flew to Egypt and to Saudi Arabia and to Turkey and Iraq. And by the way, you skipped Israel, our closest friend in the region. But you went to the other nations. And by the way, they noticed that you skipped Israel. And then in those nations, and on Arabic TV, you said that America had been dismissive and derisive. You said that on occasion, America had dictated to other nations. Mr. President, America has not dictated to other nations. We have freed other nations from dictators.
The civil war in Syria and the growing threat of it spreading was of concern to both candidates. First, the president.
For us to get more entangled militarily in Syria is a serious step. And we have to do so making absolutely certain that we know who we are helping, that we're not putting arms in the hands of folks who eventually could turn them against us or our allies in the region. And I am confident that Assad's days are numbered. But what we can't do is to simply suggest that, as Governor Romney at times has suggested, that giving heavy weapons, for example, to the Syrian opposition is a simple proposition that would lead us to be safer over the long term.
And so seeing Syria remove Assad is a very high priority for us. Number two, seeing the replacement government being responsible people is critical for us. And finally, we don't want to have military involvement there. We don't want to get drawn into a military conflict. And so the right course for us is working through our partners and with our own resources to identify responsible parties within Syria, organize them, bring them together in a form of if not government, a form of council that can take the lead in Syria, and then make sure they have the arms necessary to defend themselves. We do need to make sure that they don't have arms that get into the wrong hands.
As the debate drew to a close, each man offered a summation and asked voters for their support.
You've now heard 3 debates, months of campaigning, and way too many TV commercials. And now you've got a choice. Over the last 4 years, we've made real progress digging our way out of policies that gave us 2 prolonged wars, record deficits, and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And Governor Romney wants to take us back to those policies. Foreign policy that's wrong and reckless, economic policies that won't create jobs, won't reduce our deficit, but will make sure that folks at the very top don't have to play by the same rules that you do.
I know what it takes to get this country back, and we'll work with good Democrats and good Republicans to do that. This nation is the hope of the earth. We've been blessed by having a nation that's free and prosperous thanks to the contributions of the greatest generation. They've held a torch for the world to see, a torch of freedom and hope and opportunity. Now it's our turn to take that torch. I'm convinced we'll do it. We need strong leadership. I'd like to be that leader with your support. I'll work with you. I'll lead you in an open and honest way. and I ask for your vote. I'd like to be the next president of the United States to support and help this great nation.
Meanwhile, a new look at Catholic voters and where they live is pointing to a decisive role for them on Election Day, November 6. The Brookings Institute joined up with a polling organization. They're finding that in 6 of the biggest and most important swing states, Catholics represent at least 23% of voters. And right now, they are evenly divided between Governor Romney and President Obama. Tanks and troops are on the streets of Beirut, Lebanon, guarding against the growing threat that the Syrian civil war may soon engulf the country. The streets of Beirut have been littered during clashes between Lebanese, the Sunnis, and who support Syrian rebels, and the Shiites who back the Assad government. 4 people have been killed in the Lebanese fighting. Tensions have been high there since the car bomb assassination of a top Lebanese general in Beirut on Friday. Many are blaming the Syrian government for that attack. Meantime, in this remarkable surveillance video, the camera captures the moment of the blast. That man was at the counter of a cafe near the car bomb. Glass explodes out onto his head. He picks up a chair for protection before disappearing inside the restaurant. All of this violence is postponing the papal peace mission to Syria. The Vatican Secretary of State says the visit may occur next month. Originally, Cardinal Dolan was to lead a group of church officials to Damascus. Now the Vatican says the composition of the delegation is likely to change. At the Grotto of Our Lady of Lourdes in France, crews are repairing the damage done by floods so that the shrine may fully reopen as soon as possible. Heavy rains and a swollen river inundated the site where the Blessed Virgin appeared to St. Bernadette in 1858. Local firefighters joined in the cleanup, removing thick mud and debris with tractors, shovels, and fire hoses. The floods are being called the worst in a quarter century. More than 400 people were evacuated. Some of the shrine has now reopened, but the famous pools of healing waters will remain closed indefinitely. And a pilgrimage to Lourdes bearing the relics of Blessed John Paul II has been postponed. Organizers say it will be rescheduled as soon as the shrine's cleanup is complete. Up next, scientists sentenced to jail because they could not see the future. That and more news as Currents continues. Welcome back. 6 scientists are being sentenced to jail because they failed to predict an earthquake. The quake killed more than 300 people when it struck in Italy in 2009. The scientists and a government official were convicted of manslaughter by an Italian court and yesterday were sentenced to 6 years in jail. Their colleagues around the world are expressing shock. They say earthquakes cannot be predicted and the court case could have a huge impact on future scientific research. In Ireland, government census figures show the number of Catholics in the country is at a record high, nearly 4 million people. The number of non-religious has also increased, but their totals are only a fraction of the Catholics. The head of one religious institute in Dublin says it is, quote, amazing that despite all that has happened to the church, so many are still willing to call themselves Catholic. Back here in Brooklyn, Wendy Long is a Catholic, and she's also the Republican and Conservative Party's candidate for the U.S. Senate seat from New York, now held by Kirsten Gillibrand. Tonight, in the second part of a look at her candidacy and the issues in the race, I asked her about immigration and published reports that she opposed immigration reform.
Well, I certainly never said I was anti-immigration reform. I'm very pro-immigration reform. I think that our immigration system is terrible the way it is right now. It hasn't really been reformed since the 1980s, and a lot of the premises upon which immigration reform was conducted then have fallen apart, have proven not to be true. I think we need a thorough overhaul of our immigration laws. The very first thing we need to do in this day and age that we're living in now, unlike the 1980s, is to secure our border. We can't do anything until we do that. And the reason for that is because immigration has now become an issue that's closely related to terrorism. And so it's very, very important for our national security, for everyone, that we secure the border and then proceed to systematically go through and look at our immigration laws. And we are a country, as you say, Liz, which has always welcomed immigrants. We've been built from immigrants. We have to honor that past, honor that tradition, while at the same time honoring our tradition as a country that's a rule of law, that's based upon law and the fairness and objectivity of law and not just discretion of men. That's what sets us apart as a nation. So we've got to find the balance between being open to immigration, following the rule of law, and keeping our borders secure. Those are the big challenges as I see it in immigration reform.
And I appreciate your clarification at the beginning of that, because it is, of course, our intention to get to know you a little bit better and to understand your views on issues like that. How do you feel about President Obama's DREAM Act?
Well, the problem with that is that it really was a lawless executive order. And that's what I mean by being a nation of laws. We have certain procedures to change laws that you have to follow, getting them properly passed. And to try to do things like that by executive order is just an improper exercise of legal authority. I'm very sympathetic to the underlying challenge there, wanting to be generous and welcoming to children who, through no fault of their own, are here illegally. I think we have to find a solution to that, but we currently have in place immigration courts who can hear just cases, who can take individualized cases, make determinations like that, and that can work pretty well. I mean, our immigration courts are overburdened, they need to be overhauled, we need a fairer system of rules, but there is room in the system for discretion to be exercised and mercy and justice to walk together in immigration cases.
And in keeping with this line of conversation, I want to head over to social issues. The New York Times has said that for the most part, you've attached yourself to the party line positions, and let me explain, emphasizing the importance of economics in the election and playing down the significance of social issues. Let's talk first about the economy. Governor Mitt Romney, at a private fundraiser, as you know, did mention that 47% of Americans will support President Obama's re-election, that they're dependent on the government, they pay no income taxes, and see themselves as victims. Your view on that?
Well, I think that's not exactly an accurate characterization of what he said. I think he spoke very awkwardly, and I certainly don't agree at all with the way it's been characterized, the way it's been interpreted. I think he was speaking and answering some question about what his chances were and the polls and all that sort of thing, and I think it just came out very awkwardly. I believe that every candidate, I certainly as a candidate, am reaching out to 100% of the people with my message of freedom and economic opportunity and educational equality. I think the big income inequality in our society is driven by inequality in education. And I don't think the way to correct that is by having a government-dependent society, by increasing government welfare programs. I think the way to correct that is by giving everyone the foundation of an equal and really good education in life, because that's the basis for all opportunity that follows.
How would you suggest that we reform entitlement programs?
There is so much fraud and waste in entitlement programs right now that a lot of the reason that they're so bloated and so expensive and breaking our federal budget at the expense of everyone is because they're not well administered, and we're not focusing on that crucial social safety net of people who really need them. In order to focus our attention and get the most resources to those people, we need to really pare down on the fraud and the abuse and the misuse of these federal programs.
And do you agree that we do need to save Social Security and Medicare, and how should we go about doing that?
We absolutely need to save them, and I think that Congressman Paul Ryan has advanced some proposals for starting to do that. Unfortunately, you know, they're mischaracterized. He's not at all advocating totally privatizing them, throwing them over. He's advocating saving them. They are on a collision course with insolvency right now, and the longer we ignore them, the worse that insolvency is going to be and the quicker it's going to come. So we need to get them on a firmer footing. We need to do things like perhaps means testing Social Security. We need to do things like gradually increasing the retirement age. I mean, if you look at actuarial tables, what's happening with our older population, we're living longer, we're working longer, gradually, so that it won't make dramatic effects on anyone right now, but as we go into future generations, adjusting those things gradually I think are really important. And shifting to some other models of delivering healthcare services where there are choices and competition, and seniors can have a choice, keeping traditional Medicare, but giving some other alternatives and some competition, which will make everyone better and bring down prices.
And in the time that we have left, I just want your opinion on this. Are you confident about the progress of the ticket as headed by Governor Mitt Romney and its effect on your candidacy? And what would you like constituents to know before they head to the polls in November about this ticket, about you, about your platform? 30 seconds.
Well, I think my platform is a return to free markets, responsibility, free people, being able to take care of ourselves and allowing great institutions in our society like the Catholic Church, who have done so much good for so many, whether it's hospitals, schools, charities, to flourish. I feel like when we have a big, heavy central government, that suppresses the influence of the church and other good institutions in our society. And the anonymous bureaucratic face of government is no substitute for families taking care of each other, taking care of themselves, for institutions like the church, which is being really suppressed in the good that it can do. I think those are all taking us in the wrong direction. I think that's not the society America was meant to be. And I think we need to be a strong America. We need to believe that we're exceptional in the world. That's the reason we've been a beacon to so many people for so many centuries. We need to not feel like we're just the equivalent of everyone else. We need to feel like we are offering something to other countries, and we need to be strong. We need to defend America and her allies.
All right. Wendy Long, Manhattan attorney, candidate for U.S. Senate. It has been a real pleasure. Thank you so
Liz.
much for joining us.
My pleasure, too. Thanks.
Thank you. And I want to quickly note that Senator Gillibrand has not responded to our interview request as of yet. Currents will continue after the break. The Pope's Award. The Holy Father presents the Ratzinger Prize, and one of the winners is an American. Next. Welcome back. A Christian student group at Tufts University in Massachusetts has been barred from requiring its leaders to follow basic biblical truths of Christianity. Tufts student government is prohibiting the school's Christian fellowship group from requiring its leaders to follow the teachings of Christ. The Christian group is appealing, and if they lose, they'll be cut off from the university. Now, at LSU, another group of Christian students are not happy about a bit of photo editing. The Painted Posse are regulars at LSU football games, decked out in multicolored body paint that includes images of small crosses. But a recent photo of the posse appeared in the school newsletter with the crosses digitally erased. A school spokesman said LSU didn't want to offend anybody. And the Archbishop of Miami is so offended by the HHS mandate, he's taking the government to court. Archbishop Thomas Wensky and his archdiocese are the latest to sue the Obama administration. The Archbishop says the, quote, mandate jeopardizes our freedom. Meantime, Pope Benedict is honoring the work of 2 university professors, including an American from Notre Dame. Details in this Rome Reports.
The Ratzinger Prize is considered the Nobel of Theology. The honor is awarded by the Joseph Ratzinger Vatican Foundation to those who contribute to the field of theology. This year, the prize was awarded to French professor Rémi Brague, who specializes in philosophy of religion. Also awarded was American priest Brian Daly, who specializes in the history of the Church Fathers. The award is personally given by the Pope himself.
I 2 premiati di quest'anno sono competenti e impegnati in 2 aspetti decisivi per la Chiesa nei nostri tempi. Mi riferisco all'ecumenismo e al confronto con le altre religioni.
The Pope added that he would actually like to join them in studying some of the key documents of the Second Vatican Council, like Nostra Aetate, which deals with non-Christian religions, then Unitatis Redintegratio, which addresses ecumenism, and Dignitas Humanae, on religious freedom.
Sicuramente sarebbe molto interessante, caro padre, caro professore, ascoltare le vostre riflessioni e anche le vostre esperienze in questi campi, dove si gioca una parte rilevante del dialogo della Chiesa con il mondo contemporaneo.
When it comes to transmitting the faith and even explaining it to the modern world, the Pope said professors and intellectuals like both winners play an essential role that cannot be underestimated.
The role of the Synod of Bishops is vital in promoting the new evangelization initiative of the Holy Father. Now, one of the leading Synod fathers, the Archbishop of Madrid, says the role of the family cannot be underestimated. Cardinal Antonio Rocco Varela says parents have to take an active role in educating their children.
This means that in the new evangelization, we have to give extra attention to families. This includes giving them a solid Christian formation and the necessary tools for them to strengthen their faith. That attention needs to be given to both couples and to their children.
The synod is the sixth that Cardinal Rocco Varela has attended. We continue with more currents after the break. Polish Pride, celebrating Polish heritage in our diocese. Next. Welcome back. The heritage of Catholicism in Poland is centuries old, and the connection between Poland and our diocese runs very deep. Now, in celebration of these cultural ties, a bishop from Poland has come to Ridgewood to be with the Polish Catholics of Brooklyn and Queens. And as Bishop DiMarzio points out, we all benefit.
Well, the Polish community is very faithful members of the diocese. There's a saying, Polonia semper fidelis, which means Poland has always been faithful to the faith, to the church for over 1,000 years. And this is certainly what we see in the diocese. The Polish people are faithful to the practice of their faith. We always welcome bishops from all over the world. We're very fortunate to have this auxiliary bishop from the Diocese of Lublin, one of the bigger dioceses in Poland. He was a professor with some of the priests that are here. He taught in the university there, so it's nice to have him with us.
Today is a special occasion to celebrate Polish heritage and culture as an annual event for those who immigrated from Poland to the United States and how they are a part of the Catholic Church within the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Poland has a tradition of the 1,000 years of the Christianity, more than 1,000 years. We always stay with the Rome. Majority of the Polish people in Poland, they are Catholics, and based in our culture, on a value, and that's something for us very important.
Bringing a bishop from Poland just shows the connection and the relationship that the Diocese of Brooklyn has, that Bishop DiMarzio has with his brother bishops, and it really shows the connection and the great relationship that they have together between Brooklyn and Poland, and its priests and its bishops.
I pray for all of us as we enter the year of faith, for strengthening our faith in God and our participation in the Diocese of Brooklyn as a Polish ethnic community, and to be more effective as Catholics here in the local church and within the Universal Church.
We are a very old group, ethnic group in the United States, and actually what keeps us together is our culture, our tradition, and a similar thing like Judaism.
The Polish community in the Diocese of Brooklyn, they distinguish themselves through their traditions, their heritage that they bring. It's truly, unique that they bring all their heritage directly from Poland, and they really bring it directly to Brooklyn.
We would like to distinguish our value in a cultural world, so for this reason we can understand another cultures.
And thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us on Wednesday as the abortion battle in New York captures center stage, Wednesday night right here on Currents. Until then, visit us online at currentsny.net. Tonight we leave you with more of the pride of our Polish Catholics. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Fablis. Thank you for watching and have a good night.